Optimum. 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 Detective Douglas D. Duffy of Scotland Yard was having no luck. His men couldn't figure out who had robbed the P.T. Blarney Circus. Let's go over with what we know again. He said to his assistants, Dingle and Dougal. And to Douglas, Dingle replied,
Well, the safe that held the payroll was in the trailer by the big top.
And to Douglas again, his other assistant Dougal added,
It was guarded by two huge dogs, ferocious as lions, and that's all we know.
Then Duffy fumed.
That's all? What kind of detectives are you? I can see it's time to call my mother.
Now, Detective Douglas's mother, Mrs. Duffy, was the greatest detective anybody in old Scotland Yard has ever seen, and as soon as she arrived, she simply sat down her bags and then said, Just leave everything to me. That way things will turn out best. I will solve this case within the hour.
Well, begging your pardon, ma'am, but if we're all stumped by this case, how can you...
Now listen here, you young whippersnappers. There isn't a case I can't solve. When Douglas was a boy and all the locks in the neighborhood were being picked, I knew the culprit was the locksmith. When Douglas was a teenager, there was a case of the poison pen letters. I solved that one by sending Douglas through the city with phony petitions to collect handwriting samples. So, unless you have any objections, as naturally Dingle and Dougal did not, let's hear about this investigation. The two men explained that they'd been around the P.T. Blarney Circus, questioning the workers there, and that they had first questioned the fat lady because the day after the theft she bought herself a motorcycle. But the fat lady had bank receipts to prove that she'd been saving for months. So next they questioned the snake charmer who'd scared them half to death with a cobra round one arm and a python round the other. Dingle and Dougal felt sure he was guilty because the day after the theft, he showed up at the circus with a diamond the size of a fist. But it turned out his aunt had died the night before and given him the diamond, and he had a copy of her will to prove his story. And they also questioned the sword swallower because of his new silver sword.
And we didn't find it easy, with the way he was constantly clearing his throat. But we discovered that the silver sword was not really silver. It was just painted that color.
Tell me, said Mrs. Duffy, why are those two huge dogs tied up by the trailer near the big top?
Well, they were guarding the safe where the payroll was held. We still can't imagine how anyone got past them.
Case solved, cried Mrs. Duffy, calling a lion tamer. In he roared, carrying his whip in one hand and a chair in the other. Mrs. Duffy looked him over and said, Fuss up, young fellow, or I'm gonna spank you.
Please not that. Please, listen. I confess I stole the payroll from the safe, but how did you know?
Now, who else besides the lion tamer could have handled those ferocious dogs?
See, boys,
Said Detective Duffy to Dingle and Dougal.
Didn't I tell you? Things are always best when they're left up to Mom.
So whenever something is best that it can be, think of Detective Duffy saying,
Things are always best when they're left up to Mom.
And you will remember the word Optimum.